Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. We're continuing our look at the new Mego Monsters. I think the one we'll look at this episode, he just happens to be on top. How about that? Is Ultraman. That scary monster known as Ultraman. Okay, so he's not a monster, but I feel like he's monster adjacent. I mean, it would be like having an action figure of Van Helsing. Van Helsing's not a monster, but he fights monsters. So, as far as I'm concerned, Van Helsing is a monster character, and Ultraman is also a monster character because all he does is fight monsters. So I say he's monster adjacent. He qualifies. I mean, Igor, like the Bela Lugosi's Son of Frankenstein, Igor isn't a monster, but he's a monster character. He's a monster movie character. Ultraman is a monster TV show character. He's a superhero who fights giant monsters. Now, this is the first time I laid eyes on it. I really didn't look at it ahead of time. So I'm looking at it for the first time here. He's got... he's got a nice looking suit. The material it's made of is interesting. It does look like the silver color might come off, like around his knees. It looks like maybe there's a little bit of a, I don't know. No, I guess it's okay. I was thinking maybe the silver was flaking a little bit around the knees, but I think it's optical illusion. But it's metallic. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a shiny looking. The silver is definitely a shiny, metallic looking silver, and the red is kind of like a rubbery sort of red, and the silver head is a shiny kind of silver paint, and the gold eyes are kind of shiny. Everything's shiny. The silver hands are shiny. It's all shiny. The boots are shiny. It's not just gray. It's silver. It's metallic. Okay. Well, let's look at the figure. So yes, I grew up as a kid watching Ultraman on American television. Ultraman! I remember the theme song. And I have the old DVD set from several years ago that was where there was sort of a dispute about who owned the rights, and the company that put it out, it was sort of like semi-legal. It was a mainstream set that was sold in stores everywhere, but there was a legal dispute about whether they really had the rights to put it out. I'm sure they would say they did, but others said they did not. But I haven't got the upgraded Blu-ray set that recently came out that's fully authorized and it's remastered and everything. Because there was a legal battle about who owned the rights to Ultraman. And that was kind of a long, drawn-out, bitter legal fight. But now that's settled. So I don't know if I really... I know there's a big push to market Ultraman. The company that owns the rights is really going big on trying to put it out there and get new fans. And there's a new Ultraman movie. I think there's a new or recent Ultraman TV show in Japan. The new Ultraman movie, Shin Ultraman, looks really good because it's made by the same people who made Shin Godzilla. And I really like Shin Godzilla. I think Shin Godzilla is the best Godzilla movie since the original 1954 Gojira. And even better than the recent American legendary films. That's the studio name, Legendary. Even better than those, which are not bad. But I think Shin Godzilla is better. And I like the 90s to 2000s. I like a lot of those more modern Godzilla movies, but I thought Shin Godzilla was the best since the original. So now the same people are making Shin Ultraman. So I'm looking forward to that. I do want to see that. Now, what's this little sticker on here? But the company that owns Ultraman is making a big push to try to revitalize the brand, and Subaraya Productions, that's the company, Subaraya. Subaraya Productions have like a little holographic sticker. That's cute. It's not Mego sticker, it's Subaraya sticker on this. More power to them, I hope. And I'm glad they won their legal action. They've cleaned all that up, the rights issues, and they own Ultraman free and clear, and that's why I think because all that's settled now, they're making the big push to market it. But so anyway, so I don't know if I'll upgrade to that new Blu-ray set, but it's not just the original Ultraman. All the Ultraman shows, because there have been a number of them over the years, are all out on DVD, and they're all streaming. There's a lot of different ways you can watch them. I've only seen the original Ultraman series. I haven't seen the first series, Ultra Q, which came before Ultraman, and I haven't seen Ultra 7 or was Ultraman Leo or Return of Ultraman, or all that. There's so many of them. I haven't seen any of those, and I'm not sure I want to go down that rabbit hole very far. I do want to see Ultra Q, and then I'll maybe sample some of the others. But I definitely want to see Shin Ultraman, the movie, when that comes out. So Ultraman's a big deal. It's my childhood. I watched it all the time. I loved Ultraman. I always played that like I was Ultraman. As I recall, I would get my dad to pretend he was a monster. I think we put a quilt over him. That was his monster outfit. He would get down on his knees and on all fours, his hands and knees, and act like a monster, and I would be Ultraman. And then he would just kind of overpower me and lay on top of me until I cried uncle. And that was how we played Ultraman. But also, like on the playground, I would play Ultraman. And this is Ultraman. This is Mego Ultraman. Now, and it's the first time Mego has ever made this character. And it's the first, well, yeah, I'll just go that far. This is the first time Mego has made this character. There have been a lot of Ultraman toys in Japan, made for the Japanese market. In Popey, I mean, there was essentially a Mego Ultraman in the 1970s, but it wasn't made by Mego, it was made by Popey. Popey distributed Mego superhero characters, but even the ones that were the same as the Mego characters that were available in the US, I think Popey still, I think they made new bodies. I don't think they were exactly the same figures that were in the US. But they did have some kind of arrangement with Mego. And then, so they had, I know they had Spider-Man, I don't know what other superheroes they had. They had their selection of the US superheroes, but then they added Ultraman and Gatchaman, Battle of the Planets, and other Kamen Rider and other characters, the other Japanese characters. So technically they were not Mego because Mego proper didn't actually make them, Popey made them. But essentially they were basically Mego. They were 8-inch Mego style, marketed alongside the legit Mego product. And I used to have the Popey Ultraman from the 70s. I had a boxed one. And as anyone who's owned one will tell you, the costume just falls apart. It's made of like I don't know if it's like a foam or something, and it's heat sealed around the edges instead of stitched, and it just comes apart, even if it's unplayed with, mint untouched in the box. The seams just come apart, and the paint flakes, and it deteriorates. The costume falls apart, and if you open it up and take it out at all, forget it. It's just gonna practically turn to dust in your hand. It gets ruined very quickly with any kind of handling. But even if you don't handle it and just leave it alone, leave it in the box, it deteriorates the costume. But it's a cool figure. It's a really cool looking figure, and I miss owning one. I'm never going to own one again because the cost, it's not worth it, and also because it bothers me that costume falls apart. That you're going to spend hundreds of dollars on something that looks terrible because the costume's a mess. I don't like that. And I think when the new Mego made this, and I think they've said as much in interviews, that they were kind of trying to harken back to that Popey Ultraman, that Popey figure, to the point where I think there's some callbacks with the costume design. I'll talk about that in a moment. And I think the card is somehow reminiscent of the Popey. I'm not sure how. I've heard that. I'm not really crazy about this card art. I'm not sure what's going on here. But I've been told, or not told, I've read online that there's something reminiscent of the Popey packaging here. And since I don't have the Popey anymore, I sold it in the 90s, I can't really compare it. So I'm not sure what they're talking about. Here is the back. So there's Ultraman in all his glory. You can see what he looks like on the TV show. This is a 1960s television show. And they kept making Ultraman shows all the way to the present day. Ultraman has been on Japanese TV for 50 years. Not reruns, but like new shows. Like every few years there's a new show. It's a perennial thing in Japan. And I love how he has the little eye holes. See at the lower inside corner of his eyes, those little black dots. He has eye holes that are plainly visible on the show. Very, very visible on the show. And as a kid, I always thought that those were his pupils. Because they are kind of the look of Ultraman. Those little holes. That's part of what makes him look like Ultraman. Now they didn't, did they? No, they didn't. Or did they? I can't tell, I don't think so. No, I don't think they did. They didn't duplicate the little dots on this toy. I have seen some merchandising, Ultraman merchandising, that does have the little dots. It just depends if they're trying to be screen accurate or if they're trying to depict what he's supposed to be. And like, never mind the seams in the costume. But Ultraman's a beautifully designed superhero. The colors, the whole look, the pinstriping on his outfit, just the angles of the mask and this kind of fin he has. It's a really lovely looking costume. And the mask changed over time during the show. It wasn't exactly the same. You can see several episodes his mouth changes a little. They kept refining the look of the costume and the mask over the course of the show. Now, Ultraman he's an alien. He's like part of an ancient, godlike alien race that exists sort of outside of time and space in their own dimension. and he accidentally is responsible for the death of a human being, and I believe his name's Hayata, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in the US version anyway. And so to save Hayata, he merges with him because he's responsible for killing him. So to save him, he would bring him back to life. Ultraman merges with Hayata. And when Hayata is, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I may not be, when he's in trouble, he's got a capsule. It looks like a microphone, kind of, that he pulls out of his uniform. And I think he's got a button he pushes. And he turns into Ultraman. And he's this giant, kind of cyborg-looking superhero. And he fights giant monsters, like Godzilla-type monsters that are trying to destroy a city. And the monsters are always strangely sympathetic. They're not really bad monsters, and you kind of feel sorry for the monsters. Even as a kid, I kind of felt bad for the monsters because some of them are bad, some of them are mean, but others are just kind of, they're not really doing anything evil. They're just big animals that are kind of in the way. Well, we don't need to get into the whole mythos of Ultraman, but it's a Japanese superhero from the 60s, very popular in Japan, and also has a cult following in the US because of weird kids like me who grew up watching the show in syndication in the United States. Now, this is a lovely, if you just take this figure at face value, just forget in reference to anything else, to the TV Ultraman, or let's say I'd never heard of Ultraman before. I just looked at this toy and said, wow, that's a great toy. It's a beautiful looking costume, beautiful colors, beautiful design. This little kind of Iron Man-like light on his chest, that starts blinking when Ultraman's losing power. Whenever Hayata turns into Ultraman, he only has so much time, and then he starts losing power, and this light starts blinking. And that's warning him that he better turn back into a human. Or I think he recharges by going to the sun. I don't know if he goes into the sun or just close to the sun, but the sun, I think, has something to do with recharging him. It's been a long time since I watched the show. But he's got to do something. He's got to recharge. He's got to turn back into a human before he runs out of power. Because I think it'll kill him if he doesn't. If this blinking it goes faster and faster, and it has like a sound effect, like a warning. So he's got that weakness. He's only got so much time once he turns into Ultraman, and he starts losing power. And I think if he's not careful, he might die. I'm not an Ultraman expert, but I think I'm in the ballpark there. So now, but I gotta say though, I've got a few gripes about this costume. Now I like it more. It's grown on me as I've seen photos and things. This is the first time I've seen it in person. But the first time I saw photos of this, my initial reaction was kind of disappointment, because the costume just doesn't look perfectly screen accurate. You can see there's the screen costume right there. And you can look at it and say, well, what are you talking about? It looks exactly the same. Here's this costume. No, it's a different look. The TV costume is red pinstripes on a silver costume. This looks like silver pinstripes on a red costume. Now, I think part of that, I don't know if this fabric is all white and then all this is printed on it, or if it looks like the silver is, it's silver on red instead of red on silver. But whatever it is, that's not the reason. The reason is there's too much red in the costume. I mean, look at that. Look at that. There's too much red there. So here's what's bothering me. So like these silver bits here, they should go starting at the base of his neck, and then have a little curve and then go straight down. So only his neck should be red, not all this space. These silver things, these stripes, are on his shoulders in this toy. They should be at the base of his neck. See, it's just his neck that's red. And then instead of this angle like this, it should go straight down and have like a red stripe down the middle, much longer than that. See how long that is? And then this design follows the contours of his chest, of his breasts. So it's where his diaphragm is where that should end. Then it has like this little diamond shape. It should be right like by his breastbone, like right where his diaphragm is. And this whole thing should be up. And then he should have the silver part should be up here. And that's his chest area, not his lower abdomen. And then the red here should look like kind of like boxer shorts or trunks. And they go down way too far. The silver should be up here and cover more of the leg. And then these triangles should be where his knees, they should correspond to his knees. The point should be right there, instead of being on his shins. And then his forearm should be silver instead of red. But he's got a little bit, I see a little bit of silver there, but all that should be silver. I mean, it probably is, I mean, let me see here. He's got silver, it's kind of the way it's twisting, right? He's got some silver there, but there should be more silver on his forearm. Yeah, I mean, look at his extended arm here, see? There's the outside, and there's the inside. So, I mean, it seems like a lot of nitpicking, but I noticed it, when I say the first second, I'm being literal. I mean, literally, as soon as I saw the photo of this for the first time, as soon as my eyes hit that photo, I said, that costume is not right. So, as an Ultraman, I guess a kind of casual Ultraman fan who grew up with it as a kid, it struck me right away that it wasn't right. Now, I think maybe it was deliberate because the Popey Ultraman also has an inaccurate costume. It's even more inaccurate than this. The Popey Ultraman is more stylized. It's just sort of like they kind of had an idea of what the costume should look like, and it's in the ballpark, and, you know, it's close enough. But there wasn't an attempt with the Popey Ultraman to make it look dead on just right. And I think that, and also the Popey Ultraman has that kind of angle to the silver and more red in this area. So I think that maybe they were hearkening back to the Popey Ultraman with some of this design. But I wish they'd gone one way or the other. Either make a replica of the Popey and just put like a reissue, like a recreation of that, if that's what they were going for, like a retro kind of nostalgia, you know, reissue of a toy, and make a non-decomposing version of the Popey Ultraman and just upgrade the fabric and so it doesn't fall apart. And so if you ever wanted a Popey Ultraman, here it is, but the costume won't deteriorate. Okay, great. They could have gone that route. Or made something that was dead on, screen accurate, perfect, exactly the costume looking just like it should. I feel like they kind of went halfway. It's sort of Popey like, it's sort of retro, it's sort of modern, it's, you know, it's kind of in between. You know, I wish they'd just taken a hard turn one way or the other and committed one direction or the other. It's not a deal breaker. It still looks great. It's a great looking toy. But it could have been better if they had gone for a more screen accurate look and had more attention to detail with the position of all those stripes and where they start, where they stop, and where their angle of the straight and all that, and just made it all correct. Now, of course, vintage Mego superheroes like Captain America, they took a lot of liberties with their costumes, and they don't look anything like what the comic book version should look like Captain America Mego. Yeah, but that's the 70s. The Popey Ultraman, Captain America, all that stuff is from the 70s, and that's wonderful for the 70s. This is 2021, and I think it's reasonable to expect a little more accuracy in 2021. And I guess the reason that bothers me is because it's not a technical thing, it's not a sculpt thing, it's not a licensing thing, it's not like, oh, well, the style guide mandates this or that. It's just, they just didn't do it. It's just lines on a costume. Just make the line here instead of here. Make it end here instead of here. make this instead of this. It's just lines. Where do you put the line with this color instead of this color? Just it's just a design. So it just seems like such the easiest thing to get right. So why not? I can understand if maybe he had a clear head or something that was hard to replicate or whatever. But like we looked at the Red Death and people complaining he doesn't have a feather. Like this is the Sideshow Red Death. He has a feather in his hat. Mego one doesn't. I understand that. That doesn't bother me. He's like, I don't understand Mego figures don't have feathers. That would add complication to the production process. But this is just designs on the costume. It's just, where do you place the line? Do you place it here or do you place it here? Do you place it here or here? It's an easy thing to get right, so why not do it? I don't know. So yeah, I like the figure, but that stuff bothers me. Because I don't know why they couldn't just put the red and the silver in the places where it's supposed to be. Just like that. There's references right there on the back of the card. And even that close-up of his face, you see how it's just his neck that's red. Right at the base of his neck, the red stops. And that's important, because I mean that's part of what makes Ultraman look like Ultraman. Now, I like, okay, so it has boots, because, Mego figures have boots. I like, except Spider-Man, or Human Torch, but I understand that's kind of Mego style, and the Popey Ultraman had boots. However, Popey Ultraman also had gloves, plastic fist-style gloves, kind of like Mr. Fantastic or Iron Man. And they chose not to give this one gloves. Which is fine. I think that was the right call. But I don't mind the boots. They kind of obscure the costume details with the triangles there. But I know that his feet are silver under those boots. So you could take the boots off and display them that way if you want. And I kind of wish they'd done that. I think it would have been better just to, because it's there again, they're kind of going for the Popey thing with the boots. I wish they'd just broken away from Popey. Either make the Popey figure and make it look just like the Popey figure, or completely go the other way and make it completely its own thing, instead of sort of like it's half and half. But I would have preferred without the boots. That would have given it more of its own personality. And there's really no reason to give it boots except the Popey one had boots. That's really the only reason to give it boots. But then when I give it gloves like the Popey one, see, I mean, why do one thing or the other? Either make the Popey or not make the Popey. Reissue the Popey or don't. Now I understand that future Ultraman characters are going to have different style hands. They're going to be like this instead of like that. More like what you see right there, or both his hands really. But I don't think they're going to reissue this one. I wish they would. I wish they, if they're going to be doing more Ultraman characters, and they're going to change that hand style, and there's been a lot of discussion about the hands, why not give this guy another go in a year, give him the new hands, and revise that costume, and do the things I talked about, and adjust it all, and make it look exactly like the screen image, and don't give him boots. There's a reason to upgrade. You have the new hands, and redesign that suit. All that said, I think it looks better than the Popey version. The Popey version is a nostalgic quality that I like. I like the more metallic head. The Popey one isn't that shiny. At least I don't remember the head being that shiny. This one, I like that he's more glistening. He has a glistening. It's just everything about him is very glistening and metallic, and I like that. That's what he should look like. So I like that look. I mean, it's cool that he exists. It's cool to have him. I do wonder if even leaving him in the card, I bet that silver is going to flake off. It just looks like it wants to flake off. But how else could you do that? How are you supposed to make a silver jumpsuit? I don't care what you do. It's like where there's like Knight of Darkness with his silver chest, or like G.I. Joe had some silver outfits. He had like a kind of a hazmat thing with silver. You name it, just any vintage toy that had silver on the fabric always flakes off. Always. And this will flake off too. If you were to move it around and play with it, eventually it would flake off. But this will stay on the card. This is not going to be messed with. So hopefully, unlike the Popey one, if you leave this in the package, it'll retain its condition. The Popey one, you could vacuum seal it and it would still fall apart. All right, well, I think that's it for Ultraman. So I don't mean to bash it that much, but I feel like I want to get my point across. I like it. I'm happy to own it. Happy it exists. I wish they had made a hard decision, not hard as in difficult, hard as in definitive, a definitive decision to break away from the Popey and make a completely new screen-accurate Ultraman, or decided to recreate the Popey 100%, but with better materials that don't fall apart. Do one or the other. Maybe since they're going to do more Ultramans, and since they have a new hand design that they're talking about, maybe that's a reason to revisit the original Ultraman character down the road, and maybe take another look at that costume and give him the new hands. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. I'll have more Mego reviews coming up. Until next time, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.